All right, so we fast forward, we do all that. That marriage breaks down. You enter into a fantastic relationship.
Yeah.
It got a bit toxic and crazy.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting you a couple of times. It almost buried you mentally. And then obviously, to speed things up, you end up getting cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take me to, how did you even diagnose, wake up? What happened?
So I was diagnosed in October 23, and it probably started earlier that year, around March, and just little things happened independent of each other, and at the time you don't think it's related, and then over time it's sort of the dots started to join. So, you know, I played quite high level touch football again. I have for the last couple of years, and I had gone to nationals in the March of 23, and got back from nationals. You know, as you know, I was training quite a bit for a few years there in the gym, and I got back from nationals, and I'm in the gym, and I was in a lot of pain. Like I was struggling to work out, and anyway, long story short, it was just a couple of fractured ribs, and I didn't find out until probably 7 weeks later because I was just over it. I was constantly in pain in the gym, and eventually I went and got it checked out, and they called me and said, yeah, you've got a couple of fractured ribs, but they're healing really well. It looks like you did it about 7-8 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh, okay, I must have done that at nationals. And then I didn't think anything of it because, you know, I play pretty hard, and nationals can get a bit rough, I guess. And then I was really unwell through that period of time. But again, you know, COVID's still hanging around. People get sick all the time. You know, I couldn't shake it.
Just flu. You're talking about flu?
Yeah, yeah. So one week in particular in that period of time, like I was bedridden for a solid week. You know, had a random migraine. I've had probably 5 of them in my life, and it was just really unwell. And I kept testing myself for COVID, and it wasn't that. And anyway, but again, you just think you're sick, right?
And you're cut from that cloth where it's like, I'm just got to power through.
Yeah, you just suck it up and keep going. And then. And I was through the whole thing because you go into the doctor, right, going, oh, I'm constantly sick. And anyway, so I knew I was anemic, but I've always sort of been a bit anemic. So I've been vegetarian now for 5 years, and that's not new to me either. So that wasn't sort of sending off any alarm bells. Anyway, so jump forward. It wasn't until I joined the DOT when about July, August, so 3 or 4 months later, I returned to social touch football. And first game back, and we're playing these kids, like these girls. These girls would have been, 15, like, and again, social. So it's not hard. It's just fun, And this girl literally touched me. I was attacking the line, and this girl touched me, as you do, and into the side of the torso, and she fractured a rib. And I was so mad because I'd just come off, a couple of months trying to train with a couple of fractured ribs, and I'm like, far out. I was furious, and it was Jules that calmed me down and sort of said, Stace, she hardly touched you. And yeah, and I'm
Toughen
like,
up.
yeah, like settle down. And then anyway, I reflected on it after, and I'm like, you know what, she did hardly touch me. And that's when I started to think, that's a bit odd,
So you've had no blood tests before that when you were sick and that?
Only to know that, I was anemic.
That was it?
That was it. And then I actively went to the GP, and I couldn't get into my GP. This is a bit of a story, actually. I've seen my GP since I got back from London, so I've seen her for nearly 20 years, right? And I couldn't get into her because she's so damn good. She's like a 3-week wait. And I thought, I know what's going on. I just need my bones tested, right? Because, I'm mid-40s, 45 then, and, So I went into this random GP near home, and I explained what had happened, that I'd fractured 2 ribs in the March and just fractured another one. Should I get my bones checked? And he's like, 100% we should. I said, great. So we go off and get the bone density scan done, and the bone density came back fine. But they do a a second test when you get your bone density tested, and it's more looking at, I forget the name of it, but it's more looking at the architecture of the bone as opposed to the bone density. And the architecture of my bones was gone, rubbish. So he calls me back in, and then he tells me it's likely I've got osteopenia or something, and then he does blood tests. So he did 2 rounds of blood tests, and I remember sitting in front of this guy because, you know, they call you back to give the results. And here I'm sitting in front of this guy, and at that stage, you know, I'm like 12% body fat. I've got all this muscle on me. I'm as fit as I've ever been.
Did you, just on that, did you have some doubt in your mind going, fuck, it's something more? Or
Never.
No, never.
No, never, mate.
You were just
No.
like, I'm a beast, I'm a machine.
Yeah, no, I didn't. In fact, yeah, no. So I'm sitting there, and he goes to me, and this was his advice to me, because he knew I was vegetarian. He goes, well, look, 2 things. He goes, you're 45 now. He said, with all these results, he said, clearly you need to sort your diet out because your diet's rubbish, so sort that out. And he said, and you really need to start strength training because at your age, you're about to, you know, menopause isn't too far off. You need to start building your bone strength. And I'm sitting there looking at this guy just thinking, mate, can you not see me? And so I let him
Can you
speak.
not see me?
Yeah, exactly, flexing. And I just didn't even reply to the guy, and I walked straight out of his office, and I went over to the receptionist and I said, can you please make sure that all these tests that he's ordered go to my regular GP? And she said, yeah, no problem. She got the details of my regular GP, and off I go. So I walked out of that GP at, I don't know, mid-morning that day, and by just after lunch or in the afternoon, I had my GP on the phone. She literally called me, and she's like, Stace, what's going on with these? What's going on with these tests? Tell me what's going on. And I told her, and I said, look, I didn't come to you because I couldn't get in. And I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought it was just getting my bone density checked. And she said, well, can I take it over? And I said, well, of course you can. Yeah, absolutely. And she said, I'm going to text you a whole heap of blood tests that I want you to get done. She said, I want you to do it like straight away. And I'm like, okay.
Do you think she had a vibe?
Mate, now that I'm on the journey, for insurance reasons, I've had to get all my health records. And at the end of that conversation, she wrote multiple myeloma ? Yeah, so she went looking for it, yeah.
Because of everything that she saw?
Everything she saw, she just was, she's got some myeloma patients, and she started joining the dots.
You wouldn't think it'd be that complex. Like there should be signals. They're doctors, aren't they? And all the tests and...
Yeah,
they don't go looking for it.
It's funny, hey, because, I didn't know what multiple myeloma was. And a lot of people, I say I've got a blood cancer, and I tell them what it is, and they're like, never heard of it. So a lot of people have never heard of it. But the scary thing is a lot of doctors don't necessarily know about it either, right? So the stories, now that I'm in that community, the stories we hear in terms of doctors not really knowing to search for multiple myeloma, it's pretty alarming. So they know to search for leukemia, they know, lymphoma, but myeloma's not as common.
So I don't know anything about it. I'm just a mortgage broker. If you just did nothing about it, what happens?
It'd kill me.
In what time frame?
Depending on how severe your myeloma is. So, they all say no 2 cases of myeloma are the same. So there's lots of factors, but like within a couple of years, probably. So
she gets all the blood tests.
Yeah.
And then does she tell you on the phone or does she call you in?
No, it all happened over the phone. So I was taking the boys to Cairns for a holiday the next day. So I got up the next day and went straight to give the blood for the blood tests. And as they're taking the blood, she's like, oh, there's a 24-hour urine test that your doctor's ordered as well. And I'm like, well, I don't have time to do that. I'm on a plane at lunchtime taking my kids to Cairns for the week. And so I went to Cairns, and then I was at Fitzroy Island with the boys on a walk. We were up. It was the most beautiful spot, just overlooking the ocean. And Jo called me, and she said, I've got your blood test back. Like, she'd already got them back. And I'm like, right. And she goes, look, I don't want you to be alarmed. You know how doctors speak really calm and nothing major's going on. Don't stress. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking, well, I've known Joe for 20 years. Don't stress. And she goes, but she goes, where's the urine test? And I said, well, I didn't have 24 hours to do it for you. And she goes, oh, okay. So when you get back, I want you to do that. And I said, okay. And she said, but in the meantime, I need you to call this haematologist and make an appointment with this haematologist. And I'm like, righto, okay, send me the details. And at that stage, mate, I'm still very much, you know, I've got some sort of weird anemia that they need to deal with. Like, I wasn't thinking anything of anything. In fact, the week before I went to Cairns, or even, I think I paid for it the day I went to Cairns. The day I went to Cairns, I paid for all my life insurance, but I halved it all because the policy, the premiums had gone up so much. I'm like, fuck that, I'm not paying that. So I literally halved all my insurance premiums, paid it the day I went to Cairns. I'm getting this phone call and still not panicking, right? And then I try and call the haematologist and I got like a voicemail and it was the South Brisbane Icon Cancer Centre. And I'm like, wait up. Yeah. And then I called them the next day, and at this stage I just kept all of this to myself. But when I spoke to them the next day, they said, look, we need to review the referral. We can't make an appointment. We triage appointments. So they're like, we'll contact you. Based on the information that we're sent from your doctor, we'll contact you. And then I didn't hear from them. And so Joe called me. So I got the kids back from Cairns that week. And then Jules and I were off to Margaret River for a week.
So just on that, when you're on that Fitzroy Island, are you starting to get a bit panicky and are you overthinking it and going?
Only when
shit.
I got the voicemail, yeah. I'm like, fuck, like.
So how are you? What are you thinking, feeling, and?
I was trying not to panic.
Because your logic is, hey, fuck it, if I've got cancer, surely everyone would be more urgent about it.
Mate, you more just come up with these scenarios where, oh, maybe he's based in the Icon Cancer Centre, but he deals with all sorts of stuff. He's a haematologist. He's not an oncologist. Maybe he deals with other stuff, and I've got something else.
See, most people wouldn't be so positive. That's a good sort of strength that you have.
Yeah, no, I've not lost it the whole time, to be honest. I've probably had a few moments with Jules where I've just gone, fuck, you know, I just.
So you find out, you come back, and when do you find out?
So we go to Margaret River and Joe's calling me still in Margaret River. And I still didn't have bloody 24 hours for this test. And apparently I didn't realise then it's a crucial part of the diagnosis is this urine test because the proteins that are a result of the myeloma cells, your kidneys excrete, right? So they pick up those proteins in your urine. So she's calling me over there and I'm like, no, I haven't heard from him. I said, but I haven't. And she goes, so you still haven't done the urine test? And I'm like, no, well, I haven't had 24 hours in Brisbane. And she said, oh, okay. So she goes, maybe you haven't heard from them because they need that test. And I said, okay. Because I'm like, well, no news is good news, right? They said it's triage. They're not calling me, so all's good. And then I got back from Margaret River, went straight in and I did that 24-hour urine test. And then Jo called me again, like straight away. She was amazing. She called me straight away. She goes, right, I've got the test result. She said, what I was looking for in that test is there. You know, have you heard from them yet? And I said, no. And I said, but no news is good news. And she said, nah. She said, something's wrong. She said, you should have heard from them. And that's when I'm like, oh. And I could hear her a bit panicky then. Did
it hit you then?
Fuck yeah. And then I just went straight onto MyGov. And I went straight onto MyGov looking for my health records because you know how they post everything up. And they'd locked everything down by one test. So everything was locked, so I couldn't read it. But one was open. And I opened that one and there it was in bold red writing. So Jo got off that call as I'm like on MyGov. Jo gets off that call and...
So what's the feeling when you see that? Are you thinking, I'm going to die?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Well, like, what's
100%.
running through your mind then? Are you just,
Yeah, mate, you Google this thing. It's pretty unpleasant to Google. Like, you Googling it and,
and you would have.
yeah, of course you do. Because I'm like,
So what are you thinking? Are you going, fuck,
I'm gonna
fuck,
die.
I'm going to die, my
yeah,
kids?
terminal cancer. I'm gone. How much time have I got? Yeah.
And what else is going through your head?
Phew. A big one for me was how you tell people. It was almost like, you go through, we've had that conversation, how do you tell people that you're gay? That's one thing.
Mm.
How do you tell people you're going to die?
Did you think you were going to die?
Yeah. I still do.
Do you?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It'll
hard.
it'll get me.
You think so?
It'll get me, but look, treatment sorry. The treatment's amazing. So when I went in, I met my hematologist is amazing, and he probably just makes me feel good, but I'm okay with that. So when he got my test results, I was asked to come in the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't come, I've got a meeting. I said, I can't come, I've got a meeting. I've got an important work meeting. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're thinking, what? And then they're like, can you come the next day? And I said, yeah, I can make the next day. And then Joe called me back. They must have called her and went, she didn't come in. She's coming in the next day. And Joe's like, Stacey, like, no meetings. She said, this is nothing, no meeting's more important than this meeting. That's exactly what she said to me. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, when are you in there? And I said, Friday morning. And she said, great, you are attending that meeting. And I said, yeah, I'll be there. And so when I met him, I expected him to go gentle. So I knew there were more tests I needed to have. I needed to have because I'm Googling. And so I knew I needed to have a bone marrow biopsy, and I knew that they couldn't diagnose me without that and a full skeletal scan because it attacks our bones so badly. So I expected him to go, oh, we've got a couple of more tests that we've got to do, and then gently. Nah, fuck that. This guy, I sat down, he looked me straight in the eye, and he said, I think you have multiple myeloma, and I said, right, and then he told me what that is, just clinically, just told me what that is, and I said, yep. And he said, but I need you in here on Monday for a bone marrow biopsy, and then I need you back on the Wednesday for me to confirm it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, righto. And so it was all from then it's all very clinical, right? Then the world of just following instructions starts and attending appointments starts. And I remember when I went in for, I guess the feedback from the biopsy, and when he confirmed it, and my first question to him, Tom, was like, I said, so are you just, my exact question was, are you just buying me time, and how much have I got? And he, sorry. He said no. Because you're just thinking about the boys, And that's the funny thing the whole time. I wasn't thinking, and I still don't, I don't think about that I won't be here or I'll miss out on this. I think about the boys, and I think about the age that they're at and the impact, losing a parent will have on them. And anyway, James said to me, no. He said, we're going to fix it. And I said, okay. And I've just, mate, I don't know if it's naive or just fucking blind faith, but, I'm not a religious person, but I put my faith in that man, and everything since that appointment, I've just done as I've told, I've just dug in and taken every fucking hit he's thrown at me.
Can you beat it?
I can beat it, but I can only beat it for so long. So the tough thing about myeloma is it just keeps coming back. So when they diagnose you, they do a test to look at the genetic changes that have resulted in the myeloma. So it's a fascinating world. There are certain changes that happen in your genetics that will result in the myeloma. And I blame stress, mate. And there's no rhyme or reason to that. I've had so much stress with the businesses, and that relationship that you said nearly cooked me. Like it broke me.
Mm.
And so I blame these changes on stress. But anyway, it will get me. The genetics show that I've got a fairly aggressive form of it. Which is why James is taken a very aggressive treatment regime with me. So, it's not normal to go through what they call a tandem stem cell transplant. And so that's two stem cell transplants back to back, 3 months apart. That was a choice based on the fact that my genetic changes would indicate that this thing's going to fight back pretty hard. So, look, the good news is I've responded very well to treatment. So some people don't, and I have. I've responded well, and everything looks good, but it will fight back. And when it comes back, they'll put me on another line of treatment, and hopefully I respond well to that. And then when it fights back again, another line of treatment, and it's just, this is my life now. That won't stop.
Is there anything out there that they're working on to...
Yeah, all the time. And in fact, the good news about having myeloma is it's probably the one cancer that's had the most changes in terms of treatments available over the last 5 years. So just in that short amount of time, the difference between what's available to us today and 5 years ago, it's black and white, So, and those treatments are being made available all the time. The tough thing is they're all trial treatments, right?
Mm.
So, I'm on these support groups with other myeloma patients, and there's not a lot of us, but when you get on the ones, I guess from the States, there's a lot more. But everyone starts on the same treatment regime, so it's a 6-month chemo that we all do, I guess, and then usually a stem cell transplant is a key form of treatment. And then pretty much once you relapse from that and it comes back the first time, I think there's another standard treatment that most of us get. But from there, the next, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh line of treatment, it's just, there's a lot of trials. There's a lot, I talk to people where, I went down to Myeloma Australia lunch there about a month or so ago, and I was seated beside a couple. They were early 50s. He's had it since he was 47, so I think he's had it about 4 or 5 years. And she said he responded well to his transplant. He responded well to his VRD, which is 6 months chemo. He responded well to his transplant. He was in remission. Everything was going great. 8 months later, bang, it's back, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, And you hear this story all the time. And she's like, no, we were saying goodbye to him. We were in hospital saying goodbye to him. He was gone. And his haematologist got him on a trial. He didn't qualify for the trial because he was too sick, but got him on the trial, and there he is sitting there 4 or 5 years later on the same trial drug. And the amount of times, Tom, that I've either read or heard those stories in this world, it's frightening. So you're literally just hoping that the next line of treatment that is thrown your way, your body responds to, and it gets the myeloma under control. Because it's all about, it's incurable, so it's always there. It's always going to come back. Your body's going to produce those myeloma cells again. It's what they give you to control that. So,
you mentioned that it's sort of linked to stress, business, crook relationship, everything like that. Would you, if you went back to Stacey 35, would you change your life knowing that you could avoid this? Or would you just live life like how you have? Would you have a less stressful business, or like, do you honestly think it was always going to get you, or was it the stress of, because your business is full on and
It is full on. Even
The relationship was a bit toxic and crazy.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the big positive that comes out of something like this in your life is how you live it, right? So I think I always lived life, you know, knowing that it's short and being grateful for, you know, the people in your life. So I've always lived life like that, right? I've always invested time in my people, not just my family, but my friends and even my staff, right? Probably too much. But when you get something like this, it's next level, right? So to answer your question, there's no doubt I would do things different. No doubt. It's the stress we put on ourselves in this whole new world that we're in terms of, you know, financial stress, to have the nice car and the nice house, and man, it's when you're in this situation, like it's, you always say, you know, oh, it's not, you know, it's not important. It's not what I'm, you know, I know that's not important. I know, but yeah, mate, when you're in this situation, none of that stuff matters, like at all. It's time with your loved ones is just, there's a whole new appreciation for that.
Interesting.
That you can't, I don't think you can have until you're in this situation.
So if your boys are listening to this one day, what would you want them to take away from it or know about you, learn from you?
I worry, I mean, I still get on their back, but I worry a lot less about the boys in terms of, and I hope they don't listen to this because I do ride them about their schoolwork, but I genuinely worry a lot less about them in terms of what they'll do with their life. And I more worry about them just being really good humans with really good experiences and really good relationships. And you know, if anything came out of that nightmare of a relationship that broke me, is, you know, the conversations with the boys about basics like setting boundaries and, you know, just all those I can't believe it took me to 45 to learn those lessons. Like, what the hell, you know? It's just insane that we don't learn those lessons earlier. And so, you know, the number of times around the dinner table, because the boys were part of that relationship as well, right? And so the number of times we've sat around the table and as a family, the four of us have discussed not that, but the, you know, just the importance of, you know, understanding what's important to you and the whole let them theory. You know, I haven't even read the book. Yeah, exactly. I still haven't read the book, but you know, I know the concept. And just talking to the boys about that, and just, you know, the twins in particular are turning 15 this year, and you know, they get worked up about something a mate's done, and it's just like, just being able to teach them those core lessons of just let it go. Like, you just worry about you and your behaviour and how you know, how you impact other people, and just let other people do their thing and be them. And I think, you know, you're probably the same. I think I personally have let other people adversely impact me far too much. And unfortunately, I mean, I'm not saying it's why I'm in this situation, but far out, it can't help, right?
No. So, what now for Stacey?
Oh man, that's a good question.
How far do you plan? How far do you plan ahead,
mate? It's now. Not only do I find myself focused on quality time, like constantly, you know, the little one asked to play Monopoly. I hate playing Monopoly. But, you know, yeah, buddy, let's play Monopoly. And it's just instinctive now. It's like, so everything's changed in terms of how you spend your time. I don't work now. You know, I'm on more of a board level with my businesses, and I'm fortunate that the businesses were grown to a stage where I could do that, and so I've got management in running the businesses. I just don't have I don't have the physical capacity to take on that level of stress and do the 50, 60 hours that I need to do to run those two businesses. I just can't do it, mate. I need to curl up and have a nap every day, like. But, you know, so what now for me? I definitely, from a board level, want to make sure that the businesses are still progressing because, you know, they're the boys. That's the boys' inheritance. And not that that's important, but also when you put 20 years into something, to just say goodbye to it, it just feels pretty tough. So, you know, I want to oversee that and see that go. But I just find myself now just leaving memories. I literally find myself accumulating memories and accumulating things that for the time when I'm not here, that the boys will have those memories and they'll have those little things, you know, like, and I'm not talking like it may be a material thing, but it's more a material thing where a little thing where they can go, oh, we did that with mum at that time, you know, or do you remember that trip and, you know, we got this on that trip. And I literally find myself doing that all the time, just so that I'm leaving little memories along the way.
Thank you, Stacey. That was difficult.
Yeah.
It was. I can speak for Yops and I. That was an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
It was
thanks,
hard
mate.
work, but I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
You're a beast. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.